The online training course for the project is designed, or it will be for art, design, media lecturers who don't necessarily have any technical background at all, and will explain how VR, AR, XR works, specifically in relation to art, design, and media education. So it's very much a one-on-one, an explainer. For most, we're really thinking that for most lecturers, this will be an informational course. It will be a short training course. It will give them information, maybe point to a way that they could start thinking about applying XR or VR, AR, some sort of technique in their own teaching with their students. There'll be a little component of lesson planning, etc., etc. Now, when, as I was developing this over the past year, I became kind of focused on the fact that it was going to be multiple things. In the UK and in Ireland, we have a very strong tradition of short courses as part of professional development. They might be a course on human rights or EDI or the latest practices in relation to ICT or something like this. They're very much courses that you have to do as part of your training or as part of your contractual obligation. We try to get through them in an hour if possible, you know, at a lunchtime. You push a button at the end, but maybe answer some multiple choice questions, and a certificate is issued to you, a PDF, that you then send to HR, and they just tick a box, they've completed that course, etc. Now, short course in Ukraine means something that might be 2 days a week, you know, for 16 weeks or something like this. That's a short course. And you have a certain expertise at the end of it, you know, so it's a different thing. So really, what I envisaged was that we would have, as one component, the very short UK-Irish course, which would be an explainer that you would do in an hour. But then there would be more detailed components which would deal with online pedagogy, universal design in relation to VR, AR, XR, and then finally lesson planning, or how to make an application. Transfer some of your teaching or one of your classes into this space. And what I'm thinking now is that we don't do that, we make it all one course, okay? So at the moment, it looks very long, okay? So for the next couple of weeks, we will shorten this, okay? I'll go through the PowerPoint course. So I'm sharing here now. Okay, just the thinking first was courses, okay? So we have 4 courses. And again, the real thought that there would be a 5th course that would be the submission of the archive. But it still remains a VR, AR, XR 101 for art and design lecturers who don't have the technical background. Okay? So we have to remember this. And it's basic teaching and learning stuff in relation to online pedagogy and lesson planning. And then also, what does universal design look like in a VR or an online context? Now, again, it's not, you know, really conscious that universal design is an enormous subject. So we can't do anything comprehensive in this, and we have to keep telling ourselves that, you know? It's, again, you know, some aspects of universal design, and then basically setting up your lesson in VR. If you were to take one class, how would you then think about transferring that class into a VR space? Okay, listen. So these are the basics of the 101. What VR is, VR's potential education, plus sides and downsides, technical terms last week, and then the languages will be English, Ukrainian, and Polish. Now, there are a couple of questions that I have for the crew after this, just in terms of how we do this, okay? Translation is one aspect, but then after that, then the question would be, do we subtitle videos, for example? Do we subtitle the language spoken? Or Yuri's suggestion was maybe we do 3 courses, we do one in English, we do one in Polish, we do one in Ukrainian, which is cool, but it's a lot of work as well. You know? So these are just questions. And then some simple case studies, because we've got great case studies, and the case studies have not only evolved through the project, but the case studies that we have now are immensely more evolved than the case studies we had at the start as well. But that doesn't mean that the case studies we had at the start are irrelevant, because remember, for somebody starting out, things like the skyboxes that Matt was doing, etc., would be of huge interest because they're the step into the thing. Somebody said as well in the feedback, in the diagnostic report, well, it does exhibition spaces very well, but it doesn't do much else. You know, it's hard to do anything else. But it does exhibition spaces very well, and we know this. And for a lot of art design and media lecturers, the exhibition space is going to be the entry point. You know, as Sarah demonstrated yesterday, the exhibition space is an important space in VR. You can get your students in, something you prepared, you get them into the space, etc., etc. They learn the basics of moving around and being in it, being in the immersive environment, and then you come out. You can do something more advanced at a later stage. On the teaching and learning, then it's basically fitting VR into your program. Why you use VR? Again, it's you know, Yuri's thing always about, you know, you must have a reason to use VR. Now, the reason at an entry level can be to allow the students to experience VR. The experiential reason is a reason too, and it cannot be dismissed. And for most art design and media lecturers, actually putting on a headset and coming into an immersive space, seeing something, moving around, reading something, again, like the exhibition space yesterday, is as much as they will be able to handle for the first experiences. How does VR fit with our current teaching practice is a big question. What can we do in VR that we can't do in the real question? And this is a much bigger question, and it's more relation to, you know, practitioners like Julian, who is in a CG 3D space quite regularly, and can see immediately where there is a fit between CGI practice, digital sculpting, and the VR space, which is very interesting. But for illustrators, that's a different experience. And then for people who are focusing on screen printing or graphics or something like that, it's kind of, how do we do that? You know, and you know, what's the relevance? And then basic online pedagogy, and then just on this, the exercise would be to choose one of your classes, just one class, and say, how would you bring students into that? How would you prepare a VR space? How do you get them in? What do they learn? How do you know they've learned something? And then how do you exit them, etc. So again, basic pedagogy. And then on universal design, the idea was, what does universal design look like in VR context? Some basics of universal design. What might the universal design and access issues be within a VR space? And then what might the universal design and access issues be within your current real teaching space? Because again, this is something that the Alice has brought up, is that, of course, the real teaching spaces are not ideal either and do have access issues. You know, one of the things that one of our students pointed out was, and it's kind of no-brainer, was that if you don't hear very well, it can often be difficult to hear a lecture in a studio environment. But in VR, you can go right up to them without it being invasive, and you can hear quite clearly what they're saying, etc. So that's kind of a strange use and access-based use of VR technology, etc. And then we would have the answers to help with this lived experience. And then finally, the VR lesson plan. A pedagogical and technical run-through of setting up the lesson plan in VR, setting up the space up from a lecturer point of view, examples of VR templates, and then a checklist again, why are you doing this, what platform will you use, what do you want to accomplish in terms of student learning, and what will the outcomes be for your students. It's very basic stuff. But again, to have basic checklists would be quite useful. And then crucially, how do you know what worked and what didn't work? In the end, we were proposing that each of the students would complete an artifact, which would be basically, they would create a small VR space, and they would do some reflection against students to do some reflection, etc. So again, it was a much more elaborate course. Now, in revising this, instead of 4 course components, we're now proposing that we have 1 course component, okay? Which can be finished by most participants in 1 hour, completed with some small multiple choice questions at the end, okay? And then when you complete the multiple choice questions, a certificate of completion is issued. You know, we're like the jumping train where the certificate is still coming. Which, again, it's a very conventional online course. It's 1 course in 4 short parts. So even though I'll show you a moment, I transferred a draft of this into a blog space at the moment, and it's a big, long document. And what we propose is that we still break it up into 4, we'll say, web pages or parts, components, so that you finish 1, and then you take a breather, and then you click on the next one, and you go into the next one. You know, one of the greatest learnings from the diagnostic report yesterday, and it's really crucial, not only in terms of VR learning, but in terms of online learning, is to take breaks, you know, and it really is important. Again, easy to say, but we've got to really do. The additional resources then will be sort of in breakout pages for deeper learning in relation to the online pedagogy, in relation to universal design, and then finally in relation to lesson planning and transferring your practice across, and some reflection on that process. How do you do that? So that's it. And all things in relation to VR for ordinary art, design, and media lecturers. Okay, we're not proposing, you know, that people will be like Chris at the end of this, that they know all the technical background, or that people will now understand all the universal design aspects of this, but that they will start thinking about those aspects, and based on their own, on attempting to transfer their own teaching practice across, to this space. You know, a long time ago, there was an organisation, GISC, they still exist, etc. They do fantastic online guides. They used to be beautiful PDFs or beautiful printed documents, but they're not anymore, sadly. They're online now, which is horrible in some ways. Because the great thing about a GISC document was that it was like a magazine, and when you came away with a GISC document, you know, you felt everything I need to know is in this. And I can kind of skim read through it very quickly. But I can also go back and I can dig into case studies, follow links, all this sort of lovely stuff. So it was a very meaty document in one way, but also something you could really get through very quickly to get the bones. And that's really the model I'm using here. Lessons, references to case studies, and lots of links to additional papers and resources, but at the core of it, there's a simple skeleton that somebody can very quickly follow if they just need the entry level of information. And then the key questions here on the teaching and learning is to focus on why we use VR in our class or in our program. And what can it do that the real classroom can't do? And again, it's a question that any lecturer can ask and get an answer. Is there something that VR could do that we can't do? Like, for example, yesterday I was very impressed in Sarah's exhibition space. The scale was impressive. Immediately it was like, wow, to have, this was like a, Venice Biennale space. Like, it was like 60 foot tall, tens of meters tall. And it really showed the textiles off in a very impressive way, yes, there are problems with the texturing, but it's an impressive scale. And then things to avoid, basically things that work, things to avoid. Okay, that's it. Some best practices, etc. And then the exercise suggestion would be set up in exhibition space as a possible first entry for lecturers, etc. And then on universal design and access, the central thing was, what does universal design look like in a VR context for art, design, and media lecturers? Okay? That's the central. And then the exercise here, the suggestion would be a comparative analysis between the real classroom, some universal design aspects there, and then the VR classroom. And then the lesson planning is basically the same. It's a thought about how to transfer your class across into a VR space. Now, in order to do these, at the end of the online course, we'll present again some simple multiple choice questions. In our paradigm, you get 10 questions. If you get 8 of them correct, you push a button and submit, and your certificate is issued. So we'll still propose that Yuri on the examinarium move platform, since that should be eminently doable, okay, for